You're a SaaS founder, you've built something solid, but growth still feels harder than it should. Most SaaS companies don't fail because of bad tech. They fail because they've never become a must-have to the right customer. This podcast is here to change that. I'm Ton Dobbe, and this is the Remarkable SaaS Podcast. Every week I talk to founders in the trenches, facing friction, making bold moves, and building companies that last. We dig into real choices around focus, positioning, customer pool, team alignment, the things that separate forgettable software from the ones that people can't live without. No hype, no hacks. Just honest conversations to help you build something that people would miss if it was gone. If your SaaS should be indispensable but isn't yet, this is your podcast. Let's get into it. The guest on my podcast this week is Amos Bar-Joseph, co-founder and CEO of Swan.
We're scaling our talent inside the company so we can discover what does it look like, the 100x version of an engineer, the 100x product, the 100x seller, the 100x marketeer. How does that look like in a business that is designed from the ground up to scale its employees, not a business that employees are designed to scale the business?
This is Amos. We dig into why he rejected the playbook that built his last two companies and what he's doing instead. You'll hear how he reached 7 figures in ARR in just 9 weeks, why he believes most companies are scaling the wrong way, and why his next hire has to be worth 10 million in revenue. The conversation reveals why questioning the playbook is the difference between average and remarkable. Well, hi Amos. Thank you for making the time available today and being the guest on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Don. I'm excited.
Likewise here, and for a couple of reasons. We're going to talk about your company, Swan. Love that name, because we also have Black Swan events.
Exactly.
That's what it reminds me too. I'm not sure whether it's actually related, but I think there's a story there. But before we start talking about your company, Swan, a little bit about you. What drives you? What gives you energy as an entrepreneur?
There's the positive and the negative. I think, great founders have a chip on their shoulder. So they're driven also by anger, but also by, hope and positive emotions as well. So I have both. From the negative side, I would say that, I've built and scaled 2 B2B startups before based on the old unicorn growth at all costs model, where you raise a ton of money before you know who you're selling to, and you grow to 40 to 50 people before you got to your first $1 million in revenue. And then you start scaling your total addressable market and the vision instead of the real metrics of the business just to get to the next round. And sooner or later, you realize you built your entire company on a very sick foundation. And this time I felt like, I don't like that playbook. I feel like it's so inefficient and hasn't been innovated on for like years. And it's very driven by the investors, not really by the market or the founders. And I feel like, with AI agents, it's time to reinvent, the playbook of how companies go from 0 to 1 and from 1 to 10 and maybe beyond that. And I felt like a lot of this, change motivation is coming from, resentment against like the old model. Like it doesn't work. So many friends of mine failed there. I had a hard time in there as well. And I felt like, it's my time to change that. Basically, the positive side that motivates me is that I do think that I can contribute something to the world in terms of human AI collaboration. From that perspective, I do think that there's something deep about my understanding of this technology that is very human-centric, that it is an important voice in this revolution, that is important to sound it. And I think that at Swan, we could make a change, a positive change on the perception of AI in the workspace, in that will actually be echoed for a long time after us.
Perfect. Love that. It's a lot of the words out there are about the doom and that AI will take over everything and everybody's going to lose their job. I think there's a different story there, and I hope I'm going to get a flavor of that today. I'm normally also asking about like, tell me about something in your industry that everybody thinks is true, but you passionately disagree with. I think you told me one.
I have much more, John. I'm a very contrarian person. In my first two startups, I chased that playbook, and I chased the convention. What are the best like other people are doing out there? How could I replicate that? That was like my approach to a lot of things in the business world. And today, I actually realized that that's your way to mediocrity. And if you want to go above mediocrity, then you just got to be contrarian. You got to be different, and different is better than better in that sense. And I'm a marketeer as well and a storyteller, and so that's one of the core principles of just being a good marketeer, right?
Yeah, you could have. I mean, I'm gonna include you in the next version of my book, The Remarkable Effect. This is actually trait number 3. Remarkable software companies aim to be different, not just better. It's a very true thing. And you also highlighted the storytelling, and the remarkable software companies sell the idea, not the product. And there's a lot to do here. Storytelling is super important and underutilized. Now,
Tom, sorry to interrupt, but I just said today, and I feel like I want to say it again to you and to the audience that I feel like storytelling would be one of the most human-centric skills in this new world that we're entering into, and will be one of the most important skills, storytelling. So couldn't agree more.
exactly. Yeah, that's true. Now, we've already sort of talked around your company about like the why you started it, and the change you can make in the world around a bigger social problem, which is humans and AI. But what is it actually what your business does? What's the big idea behind it?
Yeah, so we're building the first coding agent that is designed for GTM work, not for software development. It's kind of like Claude Code, for those of you who heard about that, or like Lovable or Cursor, but designed differently from the ground up to help with go-to-market tasks and not software development tasks. Our thesis is that coding agents are eating the world, but not as people think they're eating the world. It's not like we're going to vibe code everything ourselves. It's just that coding agents are becoming our gateway into the software world. And what will happen in the next 2 to 3 years is that the software interface will consolidate into coding agents, where they are the ones that are controlling our entire stacks, because they can execute code operations within a sandbox. They have a file system that they can change, and they can update themselves, and they have a lot of cool capabilities that just connect what we always wanted from our software: flexibility and simplicity. And you get the best of both worlds with a coding agent. That's why we were so hooked. So we're building that for go-to-market. We call it an AI go-to-market engineer, and basically helps any seller or marketeer to turn any go-to-market process into an agentic workflow in seconds, from prompt to pipeline.
Wow. Well, I mean, just an assumption, but I think you're using this yourself as well.
Yeah, we're using Swan ourselves. In 2025, we were just the 3 founders, Don, and we grew from 0 to over 200 customers. I was a single person GTM department, operating at enterprise scale, but startup velocity, generating over $1 million of pipeline every month. And I did that with Swan. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it proves the power in this case. Yeah, well, I'd like to dive into the story of what underpins Swan. Now that we understand also what the premise is and what problem you're solving for the world. One thing that intrigued me was, okay, you try to be this good example of how people and technology and AI can actually work together. What has been a fundamental thing that you've done differently from the other 2 companies that you started that makes this, future-proof almost?
Yeah. So, in the first 2 companies, when we had a scaling challenge, we thought, okay, which type of people do we need here? Let's start hiring. We need a hiring pipeline. And we started investing so much resources in hiring the right person for that. And then usually it was like an executive that could hire people underneath them eventually, et cetera. So, let's take support, for example. So, we reached 200 customers. These are real businesses. We're not like a prosumer or consumer business. We're selling to real businesses, and businesses expect support. And we started experiencing a huge bottleneck in support. And, the first intuition, okay, so what do we do? Do we hire like a customer support rep? Do we hire a customer support executive that would hire customer support reps? And instead of that, the entire premise of an autonomous business, that's how we call like the philosophy behind our architecture of building Swan. We call it an autonomous business, is that it can scale with intelligence, not with headcount. So what we didn't do is we didn't hire people, but what we also didn't do is we didn't hire AI agents, Ton. We didn't do that as well. Okay, what we tried doing is we tried scaling ourselves. So we were really good at customer support. We did an amazing job at customer support. And we asked ourselves, what if we could scale our capability, our capacity to support our customers? So we didn't try like hiring an AI support agent. Okay. What we tried doing is like, okay, let's understand what's the process here. What are we doing here? What can we do chunk by chunk that AI could amplify that, accelerate that, automate that? Where do we want to spend our time? Where do we don't want to spend our time? And that gradually, in an iterative process, evolved into an autonomous support system that encodes all of our skills, expertise, processes into it. But that was hard, rigorous work that we invested in it. We didn't just shoot an agent on our customers and tell, look, handle these tickets for us. So it encapsulates our entire philosophy here of the autonomous business, which is we're scaling our talent inside the company so we can discover what does it look like, the 100x version of an engineer, the 100x product, the 100x seller, the 100x marketeer. How does that look like in a business that is designed from the ground up to scale its employees, not a business that employees are designed to scale the business?
Let me make a small interruption here. Amos just made a remark that sets his approach apart from how most CEOs think about scaling. Most companies design jobs around the business. You hire to do what the business needs done. Amos flipped it. He built a business designed to scale its employees. Each person operates in their zone of genius, with AI extending what they are already great at. This single inversion changes how you hire, how you measure them, and what work even exists. And this is what remarkable software companies do. They aim to be different, not just better. They master the art of curiosity, and then they focus on the essence. Want to master these traits as well? Simply read my book. I've made the electronic version available for free. Just visit theremarkableeffect.com to grab your copy, and inspiration will spark within 10 minutes. Back to the interview. Fascinating. I mean, what I hear also between the lines here is one of the premises and one of the myths possibly going out there is that a lot of these systems out there say, well, we actually automate a lot of things for you so you don't have to do the things you don't like anymore, the things you've never been able to, you never should have been doing before. So you can focus on what actually matters. And actually, I mean, the reason why I started this podcast in the first place, and if you look at the first 50, 60 episodes, that was in 2018. It was all about augmentation. And I think the value is in augmentation, not really in automation.
Yeah. 100%. I don't think that AI is good at just purely automating stuff. From a terminology perspective, it's important to understand what I mean by automating stuff. So if you have, our expertise is in go-to-market, right, as a software product. And we look at a lot about like AI implementations and go-to-market. And what happened initially, the first wave of AI startups in the go-to-market space, a lot of them said, we are building an AI SDR. It will come into your organization, like you don't need to do almost anything. It will learn, your business, and it will start, outperforming your best human SDRs and generate pipeline for you on demand. You just pay money and pipeline just drops from the sky. And it didn't work. It failed miserably. Hundreds of dollars of VC money poured into that space, and the impact was buyer trust that eroded completely.
Wow.
And what happened is the next wave, us Swan included in that second wave of AI startups, Don, is that, okay, how can we encode your best practices? How can we create like a system that in a human AI collaboration process takes your expertise and tries to start scaling what your talent already does good and start removing what your talent doesn't do well, and looks at it more from a resource allocation perspective. There's, things that fall into your zone of genius, the area where your passion and skills intersect. That's where we want to augment them. And then there's things that fall outside of it. That's where we want to automate that repetitive work. But we need the human to tell us how to do that before we actually automate that.
Yeah, true. Yeah, so it's the combination of both, and I really, really love that, because that's and isn't that what we all want? The things that you really do well, you wanna make the world actually needs more of that as well.
Yeah, my hope and vision with the autonomous business is that people ask me a lot, like, oh, but you're selling a future where a lot of people don't have jobs because you're building small companies that can make a lot of impact with much less people. And what I tell them is, instead of having a world where we have like huge corporations where you're just a hamster on a wheel or like a cog in the wheel, you're doing one thing that you're not very satisfied about, but you feel like, yeah, I get a salary and I go home and that's okay. We're actually entering a world where there's a lot of these small businesses and the job market is actually much more fragmented. And there's a redistribution of work in the sense that more people can spend more time on the things that they care and love and good at.
True. Completely agree. Yeah, it's a different way of looking at the whole picture. And at the end, the world is also shaping it for us because the world is getting older. The work population is getting less. So yeah, and there's just more work to be done. So something needs to happen anyway. Now, going then back to you started in 24, 25. You said you were still 3 founders until even 26. You got this philosophy about how you hire, and I've got a quote on this, I think. Let me see. We cannot throw bodies at a scaling problem. Any hire must be worth 10 million ARR. That's something that is also like new thinking, and I agree with you. It's about the leverage of what people really do well. How is that philosophy shaping possibly more than just hiring?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, ARR per employee, revenue per employee is becoming the most important metric in a business environment. Right? We talked about it, Tom, before this episode, about how it's just the best proxy to measure both your talent, how good your talent is, and how powerful the leverage that they can pull from the AI around them, right? And so the better the talent and the better the AI around it, then the higher the ARR per employee, basically. And what it forces you as a business is, to start building your business from the get-go, or even if you're at a later stage, is to look at, wow, each person here has a defining impact on the success of the company. Yeah. And what it does, it kind of like flips the equation. Instead of like a business that, employees are designed to scale the business and you tell them what to do, and, if they're not good, you fire them, etc. You start saying, whoa, that is the most important asset that I have. My business will rise or fall based on the success and, the density of that talent. And so I can't lose here. I need to invest all my resources. And so it forces you to build a very high quality talent culture. That's one. 2, what you realize is that good talent, if you want to give them the ability to grow their ARR per employee exponentially, is you want to put them in their zone of genius. You don't really know exactly what's that zone of genius, and the company constantly evolves. And so there's always that dynamic of okay, what needs to be done? What's their zone of genius, and how do these two things interact? So what you want to give them, the third thing, is a lot of autonomy. So the reason why we call this philosophy an autonomous business is not actually because of AI, and it's not because of AI agents. It's actually because when you give talented people an army of agents at their disposal, what they need is a lot of autonomy. Basically, the employees need agency and autonomy, and the more autonomy you give them, the more work they could be able to pull off. And that's where you grow your ARR per employee, by giving a lot of autonomy, by trying to create a system around these employees that pushes them into their zone of genius all the time, and by enabling them to harness the AI technology to scale themselves.
Yeah. One thing, and actually I wrote about it this morning, funny enough. There's this thing of, okay, every individual and every team can create tremendous speed these days. And I think we all see that, whether you do that in the writing you do, or whatever you're using in AI. And of course, and I hear the same story right now here. But every individual and every team moving at fantastic speed doesn't mean that the company gets velocity. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so I always talk about mental ownership. And I feel like in a fully AI native world, ownership is a human thing. Okay. If you don't hit your revenue targets, you're not going to fire your agents. Maybe you're going to fire your CRO. If you have a huge churn problem, you're going to fire your CS. You're not going to fire an AI agent. Maybe you want to replace your vendor, but it's not like you're going to change, put them on their responsibility. And then again, it's a vendor, it's a human on the other side, right? And so mental ownership is something that I feel like has a capacity to it, and is something that you need to be very mindful of and very rigorous in the way that you set it. And at Swan, basically the reason why, so we were started at 3 employees. We said maybe we're just going to grow to, $10 million ARR per employee, just the 3 founders. We realized, that's not the right mental model for an autonomous business, because mental capacity, has its limit. And so I was in charge of the entire GTM operation. And what happened over time is that I felt like my mental ownership model goes into growth and kind of like demand generation and storytelling, and sales is a burden for me. I don't want to do sales. And I feel like I need someone to just take that mental ownership out of me, so I don't need to think about sales. You know what? If you need me there, I can help. What I want. But I don't go at night to sleep and thinking about, what's wrong with our sales process? How can we improve it? Can we close more pipeline, etc. I go to sleep when saying, how do we get our story more out there into the world? How do we share, the movement? How do we get more people to know about us and to check Swan out, etc. That's what I care about. That's what I go to sleep at night with. And so the way that we look at scaling the talent pool is like, okay, do we need someone to own, like from a mental perspective, a process or an area of the business? If we need to break it down here, we need to separate it, someone needs to own it, then we need a new hire there.
Yeah, exactly. So the moment it breaks at a certain point, in that way you start looking, okay, can we automate it? Can we put an agent on it? Or do we actually someone with that mental model, that mental capacity to make the business go?
Yeah.
But it also needs to be, of course, fully aligned, because it's...
it won't help me, Ton, if before we hired our first employees, like in the sales aspect, for example, it won't help me to like bring a lot of AI agents that could close deals for me. Because if I'm going to sleep at night and I'm not the one who are thinking about our pipeline and about our sales, then nothing will happen there, really. Agents don't have that. They don't really go out to sleep at night and think about ideas and what can we do here and how can we improve the pipeline, etc. But if you have someone that does that, then they can unleash a lot of agentic operations on their behalf, right? But you need that human to have that ownership and to have that drive to be pushing the system forward.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting how this is. In the past, you had teams of people, and now you have teams of combinations of a number of things together. But at the end, they all need to be managed, and they need to be guardrailed, and they need to be given orders in order to get things moving. And I agree, it's the mental capacity of the people that is the bottleneck here. Up to now, if you look back at the last 2 years, what has been the hardest nut to crack in order to get the thing moving? and maybe I'm asking the wrong question because already what you did in the first 9 months of the business, but still, if you look back in hindsight.
So I would try to approach it from a different perspective. I'll tell like, what's the hardest thing of building an autonomous business? Okay. And I would say that the hardest thing is redundancy. So part of the resilience of a business, Tom, and you're curious about that subject and you're speaking about it a lot yourself, but part of being resilient as a business is having redundancy. It's like if someone is down, is sick, is away, is not available, then okay, we're resilient. We can handle that situation, no problem. Sure. We have other people who could help. Sure. And autonomous business doesn't work like that because there's a direct linear correlation between how much autonomy and how much scale you're trying to give a specific person to how much redundancy you're creating in the company. Yeah. Because the more redundancy you try to create, then the more there's like overlaps. Yeah, if this thing falls, these two people could solve it because both of them are working on it, right? Yeah, but if every person on the company has like maximum autonomy and is aiming for maximum scale, then the idea is that they have their mental ownership. That's the boundaries. And that's theirs. Nobody knows what to do there because like we don't need to. It's like fully autonomy, right? Yeah. And so we have a big problem in redundancy in that sense. And it's very hard to cope with it. There's a lot of things of how we're thinking about it when we grow. And a lot of it is actually on the responsibility of the person to encode a lot of their knowledge, what we call tribal knowledge, a lot of their tribal knowledge into the AI. So when someone try to take their place, they could kind of like follow the breadcrumb trail and start asking, why are we doing this? Oh, yeah, we're doing this because that's the logic behind it, right? And it's similar to how developers work. So developers have like the documenting like their code, right? So when someone goes into an area of the code base when they don't know anything about it, they can read the documentation. And most companies have a shitty documentation because developers don't want to do it because it's just for a rainy day, right? It is. And so what you realize is that an autonomous business is thinking about knowledge as software and somehow. And like knowledge is software in an autonomous business. And if your knowledge is not encoded in software and the AI, then it means that you have a huge problem with redundancy.
It is. I completely agree. The resilience comes from redundancy, to be able to pick yourself up when something goes terribly bad and you go a different way. But normally it was dealt with through people. And that's exactly what you want. The 3 people become 6 and the 6 become 12.
Exactly.
Let me see, looking at the time as well. I mean, based on what you've experienced in the last 2 years, what didn't you expect happened, but you say, hey, this is actually a nice byproduct of what we actually are doing?
Yeah. So what happened is that initially, we built Swan as a coding agent for our customers. We thought of it as like a product that we're going to sell. And okay, we're going to dog food ourselves. We're going to use it ourselves as well because that creates like a feedback loop. But what we underestimated is the power of that technology when you're building your business on top of it from day one. What happened naturally is like more and more operations got loaded into Swan. And what's happening for us is that Swan for Swan is doing much more than you would expect this product to do. And what we realized, and I think where this is going, is that autonomous businesses, they build an intelligence layer that is the business itself. Basically. So you try to encode your entire business into one agent that has like a knowledge base that can access it, can access all your systems, can have a knowledge base to understand all your processes. And if you get to a point where I call the singularity, quote unquote, in that sense of the talent in the business has context parity with the agent that they're building. And so everything that the talent knows always they always ensure that the AI knows as well, the same AI for everything. Then you get that context parity, you get that singularity. Then you have the business starts becoming an entity in the sense that it starts, really helping you scale your operations in a very powerful way. And so I think like a byproduct of what happened here is that an autonomous business became something that you can actually interact with. You can ask it questions. You can ask it to do stuff for you. And it's becoming a layer that governs and orchestrates all of your operations across the company, not as a replacement, again, Ton, as an augmentation layer that you can use for anything. And the more you invest in it, every single thing that you do, you can use it for, basically. And what was powerful here is just it's the same system, it's the same agent, it's the Swan, the coding agent that can eventually, if you work on it the right way, can encompass all of the knowledge of the company and all of the operations.
Is that then how you also kind of deal with the alignment that's required in order to keep everybody kind of moving in the same direction?
So that's a great question. And I think part of the autonomous business philosophy and the underlying thesis is that traditional companies have a huge coordination tax. Okay. They're spending so much resources and money and time on coordination and alignment. There's approval chains, there's meetings, there's decks and reviews and conversations and whatever. And
back to back.
Back to back, exactly. And what happens if you have an alignment layer, like you said, AI that everyone can work on it. And instead of trying to coordinate directly, we're trying to coordinate through a shared AI layer, basically. And so what happens at Swan is that we're working on an event strategy. We're throwing events in the US for an AI GTM workshops, et cetera. And instead of trying to communicate on it, we're just working on just telling Swan what's going to be, what are the events, et cetera. And then I have a question like, okay, what's the event schedule for next week? How does it look like? I go to Swan, I ask it, okay, how does it look like? What's their events? It can tell me, you know what? Let's change the process here about that. Let's ask that person. Swan can take my question and ask the person about it, and they can reply to it. And we're communicating a lot through Swan. We're documenting the knowledge through Swan. And so I think coordination tax is one of the biggest benefits of building an autonomous business, because you just suppress all that tax into the AI layer.
Fascinating how this is also changing so much. And it all makes so much sense. And this is all what businesses always wanted. And they created documents for it and these Wikipedia things that people had to read and no one was. And now it's it's all coming together.
So Bill Gates actually coined in 1999, Bill Gates invented the computer, for the workspace, not invented, but the pioneered. And he said, what's going to happen is business at the speed of thought. He had a book. He wrote a book Business at the Speed of Thought. And he had this vision for a nervous system, digital system that could be at the heart of the business and could allow it to move at the speed of thought. And PCs didn't bring that, but AI is.
Exactly. Getting way, way closer to that, way, way faster. 2 questions more. And one is a big one in itself, but since everything is moving at such a crazy speed and companies, also in the GTM space, there's competitors or new companies popping up every single second, possibly. How do you think about how differentiation will be created and evolve over time? This whole thing of moat.
Yeah. So I think a lot of the things are going to stay similar in the sense that there's network effects and there's relationship moats where you sold to the Bank of America for 4 years, nobody going to replace you. Now you try to replace Salesforce from 80% of their customers with a 100x better solution, and they won't take it because there's a lot of things actually stay the same. But what I think is interesting that also stays the same, but it's important to highlight, is that what you're good at, you should double down on from a human perspective. And what you're not good at, you should use AI to automate. So our mental model is that, for example, in GTM, so you're thinking about your GTM organization, how can we differentiate? So you think maybe you're good at cold calls. So you want to say, our humans should do the cold calls because we have a good DNA. We have a good culture around cold calling our prospects. We cultivated a powerful DNA around it. So we should keep that as a human thing. If we give it to the AI, then we're just like everybody else because everybody has access to it, right? And like Swan, we're good at storytelling. And so we will never give the AI to take control of our storytelling because then we're going to lose our advantage over that, right? Yeah. And so what you are good at, that should be human-centric. And what you're not good at, you could use AI for. And I feel like that was always been the truth. And now in an AI world, it just gets louder and more important.
Yeah, I completely agree. But it's fascinating how this is moving. You know, in my book, I'm quoting someone. I'm not actually forgot who it was, but like the half life of the product is shrinking. And that's sort of a thing that always happens. But now it shrinks and it shrinks and it shrinks. And when it was possibly 1 year or 2 years, it's now months, possibly weeks. So you have to start thinking about it because it's impossible to keep up. You know, you cannot reinvent your differentiation every 4 weeks.
I actually disagree with that a bit because, and before we wrap it up, I think it's important because it's really ties to my philosophy very closely. So I don't think that people think that because it's easy to generate software now, then you don't have a mode in software, like something fundamentally changes in software. And I talked about at the beginning of the episode where we're just interacting through coding agents. So we're not going to vibe code stuff. Basically, the software that we're going to use, all of it are going to be coding agents, just like Claude Code, just like Lovable in that sense. So that's how we're going to use software. And so the new software becomes these powerful coding agents. And what I'm trying to explain to people is we're moving from static software to generative software. And generative software can generate everything on demand for you, but it doesn't mean that there's not going to be a new line of software product that is going to be very powerful that could generate software for you. So there's still a world for software products to live in where they have a mode and they have powerful capabilities, and I'm excited for it.
Exactly. Well, the last question then, based on your knowledge and your experience as an entrepreneur, what would be a do and what would be a don't that you like to share with other tech entrepreneurs that are aspiring something similar?
Yeah. So do's is like follow your passion. Okay. I feel like you can't win really, like, or you're shrinking your odds of winning significantly if you're not passionate about what you're doing. I did that before, built companies around areas that I'm not passionate about. And today I'm building a company around something that I'm passionate about. And it's like everything is much easier, significantly. Everything that you'll do will be easier. Instead of an uphill battle, it will feel more like a downhill slope. And so that's definitely in the do's. And in the don'ts, I would say, listen to people like me or like people out there that are telling you what you need to do. We're living in a world where a lot of the playbooks are getting redefined, where experience could be sometimes a weakness, not an advantage, because you need to unlearn a lot of stuff. And having a fresh point of view on something could give you a lot of advantage over other people. So, lean into your intuition and less listen to people like me blabbing on podcasts.
That's a wise advice. At the end, it's every person has his own, should follow his own path, and that's where value is created. Like you said, it's the creativity and leveraging what makes people unique, and that's luckily everybody has its own things. Thanks for sharing this, and fun to kind of got introduced to your world and how you're moving on in the last 2 years. Keep following you, Amos. Good luck.
Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you for having me.
And this wraps up my conversation with Amos Bar-Joseph, co-founder and CEO of Swan. If you got value from this episode, please share it with other SaaS founders who need to hear this as well. And if you got 10 seconds, a quick rating or review on Apple Podcasts will help more people to find these conversations. Thank you for listening to the Remarkable SaaS podcast. If you want more insights like this, subscribe to my daily email, Espresso with Ton. It's a 2-minute shot of clarity for SaaS founders who want to create pull, not push. You can sign up, along with getting my book, at valueinspiration.com. See you in the next episode.